our speaker today is Subramani Sockling, and he's actually interviewing for a materials faculty position in our department. So just to give you a brief introduction about Mani, that's how he goes by. He has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Coimbatore Institute of Technology in India, a master's in mechanical engineering from University of Cincinnati. I think in between you had some industrial experience in India as well. After master's you had some industrial experience in US as well. And currently he's a PhD student, almost about to finish fairly soon in mechanical engineering at University of Delaware in the Center for Composite Materials. So I'll have you talk about this.
Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for coming for this talk. So the topic of this talk is transverse impact of ballistic fibers, yarns, and composites, mainly focusing on fiber length scale modeling and experiments. So here's an overview of this talk. I'll start with some introduction and background on this topic, and then I'll talk about our experimental and modeling work related to fibers, yarns, and composites. I will also outline my future research plans and teaching interests. So I want to begin by talking a little bit about this research program, Materials in Extreme Dynamic Environments. We call it MEDI. This is a program within which we are working on. So this program is a consortium that brings together academia, industry, and ARL to address fundamental science issues in extreme dynamic environments. So some examples of extreme dynamic environments that is of interest are body armor type applications and vehicle armor type applications. So we are interested in protection materials, metals, ceramics, polymers, and composites. So the objective of the program is to develop a capability to design materials that are suitable for these type of applications. So extreme dynamic environments involve deposition of a large amount of energy in a short duration of time. And the material has to dissipate this energy through mechanisms ranging over a range of length scales and time scales. So making this a multi-scale problem. And a key aspect of this program is collaborative research, and we closely collaborate with ARL, Drexel, Purdue, and Johns Hopkins universities. And the strategy here is what we call a mechanism-based materials by design. So the idea here is to see the mechanisms through experiments and to understand them by modeling and then controlling those mechanisms by synthesizing the material. So effectively, then we design the material for these extreme dynamic applications. So our interests are in high-performance polymer ballistic fibers, specifically Kevlar, KM2, and ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. And we're also interested in S-glass fiber epoxy composites. So these ballistic fibers are used in soft body armor applications, whereas composites are used either as a standalone composite armor or as a backing to a ceramic-based composite armor. So these, in the interest of time, most of this talk will be focused on Kevlar fibers. But I'll also briefly discuss about our work related to composites. So these ballistic fibers are used in the form of flexible textile fabrics. And these textile fabrics have a multi-scale architecture from fibrils to fibers, and a bundle of fibers form yarns, and these yarns are woven into fabrics. I'm going to pass a piece of Kevlar fabric and a yarn and a single fiber, just so folks that are not familiar can have a feel for the length scales. So this specific fabric has 600 denier yarns. So one yarn in this system has about 400 individual fibers of 12 micron diameter. And this fiber is highly crystalline with a fibrillar structure with fibril diameters in the range of 10 to 15 nanometers. And these fibril network is connected through a network of hydrogen bonds in between them. And they also have weak van der Waals type non-bonded interactions. So these fibers show a transversely isotropic behavior, that is a linear elastic behavior in axial tension and a non-linear inelastic behavior in transverse compression. So by transverse compression, I mean compressing through the thickness of the fiber. And these fibers also show what we call fibrillation upon failure. So when tested in axial tension, these fibers form bundles of fibrils upon breaking. And when subjected to axial compression along the fiber direction, these fibers form kink bands that also causes fibrillation and reduction in the tensile strength. And in terms of longitudinal shear behavior, that is, so here 3 is the fiber axis and 1, 2 is the fiber cross section. So we're talking about shear in the 1, 3 or 2, 3 plane. So this fiber has a longitudinal shear modulus of about 25 gigapascal. So now here I want to briefly introduce the theory of transverse impact. So here we are talking about transverse impact onto a homogeneous material. The theory does not differentiate between a yarn and a collection of fibers. So the transverse impact onto a homogeneous medium initiates a longitudinal strain wave and a transverse displacement wave that is shaped in the form of a V. So the longitudinal wave strains the fiber and causes the material to flow inward towards the impact location. And when the transverse wave is much slower than the longitudinal wave, and when the transverse wave arrives, the material moves in the direction of the impact. So, so one can determine the longitudinal wave using this equation, which is a material property, whereas transverse wave speed is dependent on the strain in the material and also the wave speed itself. So this theory is correlated well with experiments in terms of both wave speeds and the angle that the transverse wave makes with the horizontal. But whereas some discrepancy in terms of predicting failure. So, for example, these Kevlar fibers has a failure strain in the range of 3.5%. So for this failure strain, the theory predicts a breaking velocity, that is the velocity required to rupture this fiber, around 850 meters per second. Whereas experimentally, folks from Southwest Research report about 40% reduction compared to this theoretical predictions. So their explanation is that one is due to the bouncing of the material in front of the projectile, assuming that the material behaves as a linear elastic medium. So you can think of it as an elastic collision where a material at rest is impacted by a massive rigid surface, resulting in a bounce of the material. And the second reason is interaction of waves from the edge of the projectile at the center of the yarn. Those are their explanation for this observation of lower breaking speeds from the experiments than the theory predictions. And the theory also does not take into account the projectile shape and the projectile fiber or projectile yarn interactions. And the boundary condition here, the theory assumes it's a constant velocity impact at a point. Now, how do we measure ballistic performance? So, V50 is one of the widely used measures to characterize the ballistic performance of an armor system. So this V50 is defined as a velocity at which the projectile is expected to perforate an armor system 50% of the time. And this V50 is determined through an experimental statistical method. And then if we think about what are the properties that affect this ballistic performance. So CUNIF showed empirically that this V50 linearly scales with what's called as CUNIF velocity, which is a product of the fiber specific toughness and the fiber longitudinal wave speed. And this velocity has shown to be useful in initial relative ranking of ballistic fibers, except in the case of polyethylene fibers, arguably due to its low melting temperature. Now here I give some examples if you are interested in numbers of these wave speeds. So for example, polyethylene fiber has wave speed just over 10,000 meters per second, whereas Kevlar has around just over 7,500 meters per second. So this is the speed at which the impact energy is taken away from the impact location. So next, as you can imagine, ballistic impact onto these fabrics is a complicated process involving multiple length scales and the anisotropic material behavior, projectile geometry interactions, things like that. So some of the physically observed mechanisms are spreading and flattening of these fibers that depends on the projectile shape. So a sharp-nosed projectile can easily push through the yarns and can penetrate the fabric. And some other observations are significant flattening of the fibers under impact. And people have also seen kink bands on the fibers. And also there is bending of fibers right around where the transverse wave comes out of the impact location. So most of the experiments are at the yarn length scale and at the fabric length scale. So recall that yarn is a collection of group of individual fibers. Even with these experiments, fundamental mechanisms such as material failure and dynamic fiber response and fiber level mechanisms are not well understood. So in terms of modeling these fabrics, there is a number of researchers have used several different strategies. So we have a membrane-based model to represent the fabric as a membrane. And we have a homogenized yarn length scale model, which models individual yarns using a 3D orthotropic continuum. And there is also a global local approach which combines these 1 and 2 approaches and which results in a computationally efficient scheme. So as we go down the length scale, the computational expense also really goes up pretty quickly. At the fiber length scale, people used a few 1D rod elements to represent hundreds of fibers within a yarn. Some of the common limitations of all these approaches are they assume that the dominant loading is only axial tension and they neglect all the other deformation modes. But physically we see significant transverse compression and fiber-fiber interactions and things like that. So our motivation here is to obtain maximum ballistic performance at minimum weight to increase the mobility and survivability of personnel. So some of the previous studies have shown that impact performance may be improved by impregnating these fabrics with silica nanoparticles and shear thickening fluid. So that essentially increases the inter-fiber and inter-yarn interactions, thereby increasing the energy absorption through frictional interactions. Now, this provides an opportunity to tailor the material properties to achieve optimum ballistic and structural performance. So here the physical problem is impact of a projectile with a characteristic geometry. You can have a round nose projectile or a sharp nose projectile or one with a flat face and a corner radius onto a multi-layer fabric. And then which turns into this impact onto a group of fibers and then onto an individual fiber. So if you look into the fabric impact mechanics, so the yarns that are in direct contact with the projectile, we call them as primary yarns. So these primary yarns, when they are impacted, they drive, so the longitudinal and transverse waves develop in these primary yarns, and they drive the longitudinal wave in the secondary orthogonal yarns. So those are the yarns in the perpendicular direction. So effectively, the waves in the primary yarns provide an effective transverse impact on the secondary yarns at the yarn length scale. So for this talk, we are more limited on the fiber and the yarn length scale. And the length scale and the time scales we are talking about are from micron to millimeter and from nanoseconds to microseconds. So now, our objectives here are to gain a fundamental understanding of this individual single fiber response and fiber level mechanisms. And we also want to investigate the role of transverse properties and axial compression of these fibers during impact. And then also understand the issues in bridging the length scales from fiber to yarn level. So the current, So the current state of the art yarn impact experiments are around here in the length scale and time scale chart. And the efforts are to move both lower in space and in time. So we adopt a hybrid computational experimental systematic approach to do this. And we identified the need to develop fiber length scale 3D finite element models to better understand the experimental results. And then these computational models guide us in developing some single fiber experimental methods to accurately characterize the single fiber response and to develop a constitutive model which we can then go back and use in our models to better understand the mechanisms. So to our knowledge, there are no single fiber impact experiments reported in the literature. So we've gone and we modeled this single fiber impact at the midspan with a rigid cylindrical projectile of different radius and impact velocities using a 3D finite element model with commercial finite element code LS9. So the model predicts during short time scales significant transverse compressive deformation in the fiber, and the model also indicates multi-axial stress states in the fiber. These the magnitude of these compressive strains depend on the impact velocity. Now, most of the literature is focused on the axial tensile loading, whereas the consideration of bending and its effects is very limited. So what we have done is we wanted to understand the role of this longitudinal shear modulus. So we did a parametric study on this longitudinal shear modulus G13. So when G13 is negligible, the transverse wave is a straight line because the fiber is highly shear deformable with no flexural resistance. As G13 increases, bending begins to dominate, and the model predicts a dispersive flexural wave in the fiber. So the high frequency component of the wave travels faster than the low frequency component. So for a fixed location, you have higher oscillations for smaller times, and for a fixed distance, you have higher oscillations at longer distances. So now to validate this flexural waves, we derived a closed form analytical solution for the transverse displacement of an Euler-Bernoulli beam using the flexural wave theory in thin rods. So the analytical solution also indicates the presence of dispersive flexural waves. Now, what is the implication of this flexural waves? This flexural wave induces curvature in the fiber that is high enough to cause compressive kinking, eventually forming kink band formation. We've also seen that kink bands leads to fibrillation in the fiber, and fibrillation typically reduces the tensile strength of these fibers. And these linear elastic models also predict bounds of the fiber. So the theoretical upper bound for a linear elastic collision for an elastic material impacted by a massive rigid surface is 2. That is, the bounce velocity is 2 times the impact velocity. So the models predict around 1.9 times the impact velocity. So this bounce effectively increases the strain in the material. So the experimental braking speeds are for yarns, whereas here we are predicting the braking speeds from the model for single fibers. So both single fibers and yarns have similar failure strains. So it may be argued that they may have similar braking speeds, but I think that's debatable because yarns have much more complicated deformations to fiber-fiber interactions. So what we've done is we've bound the braking speeds from the models. So the lower bound is based on a max principal failure stress criteria, and the upper bound is based on a membrane stress failure criteria, that is average stress acting in a fiber cross section. So for the max principal failure stress, failure is always predicted at the point where the curvature is maximum, and all the action is happening within the projectile radius. So now this is an FSP projectile, that is a fragment simulating projectile. It has a flat face and a sharp corner with a radius of about 20 micron for this case. So for this case, all the action is happening within this corner radius, where there is a significant local multi-axial stress concentration. So we'll talk more about this a little later. So now, to understand the fiber level mechanisms, we model this yarn transverse compression at the fiber length scale by explicitly modeling all the individual fibers in a yarn. So this is a 2D plane strain model. So here we approximate the cross section of the yarn as an ellipse, and the fibers are arranged in a hexagonally closed packing. So to provide the constraints provided by the adjacent orthogonal yarns, we model the platens as sinusoidal shape based on the fabric architecture. Now, during initial loading, the fibers spread and rearrange spatially with little deformation, and once they settle down, further loading significantly deforms these fibers with a complex distribution of stresses and strains within the yarn depending on their spatial location. Now here is a micrograph of a cross-section of a yarn that is taken from a compressed fabric. So close examination of this micrograph shows significant deformation of these originally circular fibers into hexagons. and also there is multiple contact areas around these fibers, consistent with our model predictions. And transverse compression of individual yawns also shows significant spreading of these yawns due to fiber-fiber contact interactions. I'll talk more about this experimental setup in a bit. So now we studied the same problem using a homogenized yawn length scale model that's commonly used in the literature. So these homogenized yawn models assume that all the Poisson's ratios are 0, and they assume that axial tension is the dominant loading. So here we compare the response between two length scales, and clearly the fiber length scale response is highly nonlinear due to the fiber-fiber contact interactions compared to the homogenized length scale response. And a sensitivity study of the coefficient of friction between the fibers indicate that there may be a dependence on the friction coefficient with a larger force required to compress the fibers with larger friction coefficient. So these studies indicate that fiber-fiber contact may play a role in the spreading and deformation of individual fibers. So now the natural next step is to understand this fiber-fiber interactions during the impact. So here we modeled this impact at the fiber length scale by using 3D finite element model and considering contact interactions between all the fibers. So this results in a computationally very intensive model with over 40 million degrees of freedom that is solved in a supercomputing platform. So now, similar to single fiber impact model, this yawn models, the fibers in the yawn also experiences significant transverse compressive stresses and strains during impact. So the fibers at the top row undergo initial deformation and then transfer load along the width and towards the bottom of the yawn through fiber-fiber contact. So this is all consistent with the most recent experimental observations from Song and Lu from Sandia, where they showed that the fibers are impacted progressively along the thickness direction based on their high-speed camera images. So they also note that the yarn behaves as a group of fibers than as a homogeneous medium. So this is a movie at the long time scales. The transverse wave that I talked about initiates from the location and propagates to the clamp end, reflects, changes the particle velocity and returns to the impact location. And in addition to the transverse wave, we also see an additional spreading wave. It spreads the fibers to a large extent. This is due to the fiber-fiber contact. So looking from top down, the spreading wave initiates from the impact location, it goes to the clamped end and then reflects and comes back. So there is a gradient in the spreading velocity for all these fibers. So the spreading velocity is maximum for the fiber on the outermost at the yarn width, because this fiber is unconstrained. It's free to move in this direction, so it's maximum at that location. So what is the implication of this spreading wave? So this spreading wave induces non-uniform axial loading within this group of fibers, and also induces progressive failure within the fiber. So this spreading wave makes an angle with the horizontal, and this angle is maximum for the fiber on the outermost location. So potentially these fibers begin to fail first because they are stretched more compared to the fibers on the inside. So the models predict about 25% increase in the axial tensile strains for the fibers on the outer edge of the yarn. So now, when you compare this response with the homogenized model, the major difference is in terms of dynamic fiber kinematics. The fiber length scale model predicts significant fiber spreading due to fiber-fiber contact interactions, whereas homogenized model is not able to capture that deformation of the fibers and the progressive nature of loading and failure of these fibers within a single yarn. And if you look at a sharp nose projectile, I think I have a video here. So the fiber bundle offers very little resistance to penetration for a sharp-nosed conical projectile. Whereas a homogenized model offers very high resistance to penetration because the model is not able to capture these fiber level mechanisms. So now with these computations, we have some idea of the mechanisms that occur at the fiber length scales. We now wanted to develop some single fiber experiments to better characterize these fibers. So what we did is here, we physically induced the curvature that the model predicts, the curvature from the flexural wave, by wrapping individual single fibers around a boron rod. So by this, we are forming kink bands on these fibers. And we are able to characterize the kink band density and kink band angle. And what we see here is, with the decrease in the wrapping radius, the kink band density quickly increases. And interestingly, we collaborated with a colleague who does molecular dynamics simulations. And his MD simulations of this kinking process indicates that kinking is due to buckling of these fiber chains. And also interestingly, the normalized kink, characteristic kink density correlates well with the experiments. So next, we tested these kinked fibers in axial tension to characterize the residual strength of these fibers. So a statistical analysis shows a decrease in the average tensile strength compared to baseline fibers. And also the cumulative distribution function shifts to the left, indicating a higher probability of failure. And we see significant fibrillation of these fibers around the kink bands. And this experimental work is done by one of the undergraduate students I had the opportunity to mentor, Reed Bremble. And we also had a chance to co-author a conference paper with the student. And we also obtained funding for this student through a proposal for this undergraduate internship program to this medium. And to better understand the transverse properties of these fibers during impact, we developed an experimental setup where we are able to compress individual single fibers between sapphire substrates. So this setup is within an Engstrom micro tensile tester. And we're also able to watch the deformation during the compression and measure load displacement and compressed width that is defined as 2W here in real time. And then measure this contact width at different applied strain levels after doing the test. So now the experimental response is clearly nonlinear and inelastic. And the response consists of both geometric and material nonlinearity. Geometric nonlinearity is due to the growing contact area, and material nonlinearity is, you can see from the permanent strains that we see from unloading. So unloading, so the material accumulates large residual strains. So our objective here is to isolate the material behavior from the total response. Because we need that to develop a constitutive model for the fiber that can be used in the modeling. So here are some microscopy images of the compressed fibers at different strain levels. So here the fibers are loaded uniformly along the length, and we see fibrillation at the surface of the fiber for strains greater than about 40%. So for higher strains, we see significant splitting of the fiber along its length. And the in situ compressed width data shows that there is negligible elastic recovery. So once the fiber grows, it doesn't come back. And the compressed width also plateaus at higher load levels to approximately 3 fiber diameters. So now to obtain true stress strain behavior, we normalize the applied force by the measured effective contact area, and then the true strains are obtained by equating the internal energy to the external work done. So by this we are able to get the true stress strain response of these fibers. So the response can be categorized into 3 zones. So we have a very small linear elastic zone. These fibers have a very small elastic limit. The elastic limit is only about just over 1%. And the second zone is where the fibers soften and also the fibrillation initiates. And the third zone is where it shows a stiffening behavior because now the width growth is plateaued. And we think that the fibrils are being compressed in this third zone. So now the next step is, with this experimental observation, we wanted to model this experimental behavior where we implemented a user-defined material model in LS-DYNA. So here we used a plasticity approach, that is Hill's yield criterion, to model this transversely isotropic inelastic behavior. I won't go too much into the details. So the nonlinear inelastic model shows much better correlation to the experimental results compared to a linear elastic assumption. And the model is also able to capture the energy absorption associated with unloading. Now, we have the material model for nonlinear behavior of the fiber. The next is, we want to understand how that affects the impact response. So we went back and studied this impact of the fiber using the nonlinear model. So in the elastic case, we saw that the fiber bounces in front of the projectile. The projectile repeatedly interacts with the fiber, resulting in a series of bounces like this. Whereas in the case of the inelastic material, this effect is significantly diminished due to the plastic dissipation of the inelastic behavior. So that's what is shown here. And also the curvature predicted by the inelastic model is much smaller compared to the elastic model. So therefore the breaking speeds predicted by inelastic model is higher compared to an elastic case. Similar predictions are for yarn transverse impact also. So for a given impact velocity, the inelastic model predicts lower percentage of fibers failed within a yarn compared to an elastic case. So now these are our ongoing work in this topic, where we are trying to develop multi-axial failure envelopes. We have just finished completed testing of, so we first compress the fibers and then pull them in tension to measure their residual strength. Because compression also induces fibrillation and that reduces the tensile strength. So what we see is, for fibers compressed at around 60% strains, there is a 20% drop in tensile strength. And we are also modeling the experiments done by our collaborators at Purdue, where they transversely loaded these single fibers at different start angles. So as the start angle increases, the failure strain decreases, indicating the multi-axial loading. So we are trying to model these experiments to back out multi-axial failure envelopes to better and accurately predict the failure of these fibers. And we are also interacting with Southwest Research to do some post-failure investigation of the impacted yarns. And our other ongoing work is on developing a constitutive model for these ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene fibers. So unlike Kevlar, polyethylene is a simpler molecule with no amide group. But these fibers have a lot of voids in them to begin with. And so our preliminary results show that the response in transverse compression is much softer compared to Kevlar,